Hello, friends. Today is Friday, February 15th, 2019, as I record this, and this is episode 1 of my podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Leslie. I write as Elle Penelope, and I write fantasy and paranormal romance. And I wanted to start this podcast for a couple of reasons. I was inspired partially by Joanna Penn and the Creative Penn podcast, and her show is primarily an interview show, but at the beginning of each episode, she does a personal update, which is what she's been working on for the past week, things she's thinking about, news in the publishing industry. And so many people, including me, just find a lot of value in that and love hearing her updates. And sometimes she does complete solo shows also, where she's just talking about a particular topic. And so hearing her perspective on things is really interesting. And I thought that it would be cool to share that, my perspective and my journey, as a way to maybe help other people, help readers understand more about what goes into a writer's life, and help other writers to just learn about experiences that I've had. Another inspiration was Jeffe Kennedy's podcast. She has an almost daily one, which is, I think it's called First Cup of Coffee, and where she does a similar thing. She's catching you up on what's happening in her life and her perspectives on things. And it's really interesting. And she, in turn, was inspired by Nathan Lowell, who has talking on my morning walk. And there was another one by, he did the self-publishing podcast, The Walking Dave, and David Wright. And I think it's over now, but he was walking and talking. And I thought that was a lot, but like, I thought that it would be a good idea to just do something kind of low key that's not highly produced, and it's mostly just sharing the journey, sharing my thoughts and inspiration, research, process, writing craft, ideas, bits from the news and things like that, to hopefully just inform and inspire and maybe entertain. But so that is why I started this podcast. And I called it My Imaginary Friends because I'm a writer. I write fantasy, and I think all writers, their characters live in your mind. And as a kid, I actually had 2 imaginary friends growing up, Star and Flower. Those were their names. And I had, just a little bit more than your average. So I've been writing since the very beginning, since I learned to write. My first story I have was when I was 5 years old, and it's called Time and the Magic Clock. And I thought it was a novel. It was 1 or 2 pages long, but for me, that was a novel. And I wrote all through school, all growing up, my whole entire life. And I started publishing in 2015. So that's a little bit about me and why I decided to do this. And I hope that if you have things that you would like to hear me talk about, you'll leave a comment, or you can always email me. And hopefully it will be something that you want to listen to and something that you'll get some value out of. So I want to do something called This Week's Best Thing, where I share something that was really inspiring, or something I found really amazing this week. And this week's best thing is this, there's a graphic that was shared in one of my Facebook groups, and I will put it in the show notes, and if you're watching on video, I'll put it up on the screen. It's this, so the graphic is sort of like these 4 concentric circles. Not concentric, these 4 circles that overlap in different ways. And it's called Ikigai, I think. And it says a Japanese concept meaning a reason for being. And so it combines what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. And then as those overlap, in the middle is a reason for being. So the meeting point of all of those things, what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs, is your reason for being. And different parts of these circles overlap in different ways. So you can see passion is the overlap of what you love and what you're good at. Profession is what you're good at and what you can be paid for. Vocation is what you can be paid for and what the world needs. And mission is what you love and what the world needs. And when I saw that, it just spoke to me so much, because in my day job, I'm a website developer, because I always loved the technical and the creative, And I always say that I'm equal parts right brain, left brain, because I always like to be doing something technical and something creative. And so multimedia was the perfect choice for me. And I find that, a lot of people talk about finding your why, like especially when you're going through something difficult, through hard times, and remembering, why am I doing this in the first place? Is this worth it? Is this really what I want to be doing? As challenges are coming up at you constantly, so really grounding yourself in why am I doing this in the first place? Publishing is very difficult. I'm hybrid, so I publish traditionally and do self-publishing. And so, and both of those paths are difficult. There's advantages and disadvantages to both of them. And there's just struggles and benefits, obviously, to both of them. So, whatever you're doing, whether it's in the writing world or in life, coming back to your why and your reason for being. And I thought that if you can find that perfect overlap, the ikigai, and I'm probably saying that wrong, but it seems like that's kind of the point, of going on this journey and trying to find that overlap between all of these things that are so essential, and then you can have a sense of peace and well-being and be grounded in the knowledge of why you're doing what you're doing, so that no matter what comes up, you're good. You can just fall back on that and hopefully find some comfort. So for me, that was this week's best thing, seeing that and learning about this concept and really just focusing in on why I'm doing what I'm doing. So my update for this week, I am working on revisions for book 3 in Earthsinger Chronicles. It's called Cry of Metal and Bone, and it is the biggest, most sprawling book yet. This is the first podcast, and I'm beginning the stage of the revision, which includes not only revising the 107,000 words that's there, but also adding another storyline. Because if you've read Song of Blood and Stone, if you're familiar with it, the special edition paperback is coming out this summer. And for that special edition, I added new material. And then in book 2, which is coming out in October, I had written that. And so when we decided to do the special edition, I did have to go back and revise that one and add new material. So book 3 had been written, and now I have to go back and add new material to that. So it's kind of a dual revision, where looking at what I had and just making sure that it's working on all of the different levels, and then adding another storyline that harkens back to the storylines that were added to the first 2 books, and making everything cohesive. And so I'm still in the brainstorming stage. So I'm doing 2 things simultaneously. I'm brainstorming the new storyline and all the scenes. Right now I'm trying to figure out, I know the shape of it. I've gotten my one sheet high level overview, and now I'm breaking it down into scenes so that I know where they go in between what's existing. The second part of it is really breaking down the existing material. And some of it is going to have to change based on things I did when I added new material to the special edition, because I kind of stole some stuff that I was going to do in book 3 and put it in the book 1 special edition. And so, it's starting out any process and any part of the writing process, whether it's a first draft or I don't know what draft this is, because this book has gone through so many changes. Beginnings. On the one hand, everything is possible, like you're starting, fresh and this new slate. And on the other hand, it can be overwhelming. So that's what is going on right now with me in my writing world. And so that's it for the first episode. Thank you so much for joining. And I think I have to find some sort of outro saying, which I haven't done yet. But if I figure it out before this launches, I will tack it on to the end, and then you'll hear it. So talk to you next week. In the meantime, happy reading, and thanks for joining me. For episode show notes and to learn more about me and my books, go to lpenelope.com.